always starts the same way. Not with clarity, not with closure, not with some grand apology that explains everything you spent nights trying to decode. It starts with a message. A name lighting up your phone after silence that felt endless. A tiny vibration that somehow reaches straight into your chest. And suddenly, your body forgets all the brave things you told yourself. The boundaries, the dignity, the speeches you practiced in the shower. The version of you that said, "If they ever come back, I'll be different." Because this is the part nobody talks about. When an avoidant comes back, it does not just reopen the connection. It reopens the wound. And the most dangerous moment in this entire dynamic is not when they leave. It is when they return. Because when they leave, at least reality is honest. Painful, but honest. They are gone. You know where you stand, even if it breaks you. But when they come back, they bring something far more destabilizing than rejection. They bring hope. And hope, in the wrong hands, can make you betray yourself faster than loneliness ever could. So, if they've come back, if they've reappeared soft and curious, maybe warm, maybe vague, maybe acting like no real damage was done, this is what you need to understand before you respond. The brutal truth is this. If you are still waiting for their return to finally prove your worth, you are already handing them the power to hurt you again. That is the truth most people do not want to hear. Because part of you still wants their return to mean something grand. You want it to mean they realized, they regretted it, they missed you so deeply that they had no choice but to come back changed. Maybe they did miss you. But missing you is not the same as being ready for you. And if you confuse those two things, you will walk straight back into the same fire, calling it fate. Avoidant people are not heartless in the way people imagine. They are rarely as cold as they look. Most of the time, they are flooded, overwhelmed, internally split. They can want closeness and fear it in the same breath. They can crave your warmth and then feel trapped by the very intimacy they reached for. Their nervous system reads deep emotional connection not only as love, but as danger. That's why their behavior feels so contradictory. They lean in, then pull away. They soften, then go silent. They tell you they care, then disappear in the exact moment care starts to require emotional presence. And if you have ever been on the receiving end of this, you know how insane it feels. Because your mind tries to make logic out of inconsistency. You replay every conversation, every delayed reply, every shift in tone. You search for the exact point where warmth became distance. You look for the sentence that ruined it, the moment you asked for too much, the way your need might have scared them off. But the truth is usually deeper than that. Avoidant behavior is often not a clean decision. It is a nervous system strategy. When intimacy gets too close, the amygdala can interpret emotional exposure as threat. The body fills with stress chemicals. Cortisol rises. The system moves toward protection, not connection. And in that state, distance feels like relief. Silence feels like control. Detachment feels safer than vulnerability. That does not make their behavior harmless. It just makes it understandable. And this is the reframe you need if you are going to stop bleeding in circles. They did not always pull away because they stopped caring. A lot of the time they pulled away because they cared and became overwhelmed by what caring awakened in them. That is why their return can feel so confusing, because some part of them did feel your absence. Some part of them did think about you in the quiet. Some part of them did miss the safety, the attention, the emotional oxygen you gave them. But if nothing has changed inside them, then their return is not necessarily a new chapter. Sometimes it is just the old cycle looking for a new opening. So how do you respond when an avoidant comes back? Not with punishment, not with performance, not with paragraphs designed to make them finally understand what they did to you, and definitely not with instant emotional availability. You respond with one thing: non-reactivity. Not coldness, not games, not pretending you don't care when you do. Non-reactivity. This is the concept that changes everything. Because most people think power in these dynamics comes from saying the perfect thing, the perfect text, the perfect boundary, the perfect balance of warm but not too warm, distant but not too distant. But real power is nervous system stability. It is your ability to remain emotionally anchored in the presence of the very thing that used to destabilize you. When they come back, they are often expecting one of two versions of you. Either the version that is still wide open, still relieved, still ready to reconnect the second they crack the door, or the version that is angry, emotional, overflowing, reactive enough to confirm that they still have access to your inner world. Both give them information. Both tell them you are still revolving around the impact they had. Non-reactivity tells them something else. It tells them you are no longer easy to re-enter. Imagine it. They send, "Hey, been thinking about you." The old you feels your stomach drop. Your heart races. Dopamine spikes with the promise of relief. Every cell in your body wants movement, response, contact, meaning. You want to ask why now? You want to ask where they went. You want to ask if this is real. You want to finally release all the pain you carried alone. But the new you pauses. Not to manipulate, to regulate. Because for once, their arrival is not more important than your state. That pause matters more than people realize. In that pause, you interrupt the old chemistry. You stop letting their attention function like a drug. You stop proving that your emotions are available on demand. You stop feeding a pattern where they vanish, return, receive, relax, and repeat. Non-reactivity sounds simple, but psychologically, it is revolutionary. It means you do not respond from the abandoned part of you. You do not respond from the starving part. You do not respond from the part that still hopes one message can redeem months of confusion. You respond from the part that has seen the pattern clearly. Maybe you answer briefly. Maybe you stay polite. Maybe you take your time. Maybe you say, "Good to hear from you. What made you reach out?" Not to accuse, not to chase clarity, but to place responsibility back where it belongs, on them. See, this is where the power dynamic begins to change. Because avoidant people often feel comfortable when connection is light, easy, and low pressure. But when they sense real emotional consequences, real self-possession, real standards, something shifts. They can no longer drift back in and rely on your openness to do the emotional labor for both of you. And that is usually the moment they start feeling what you used to feel: uncertainty. They start wondering if you've changed, if you've moved on, if they still matter, if the access they once had is gone. And suddenly the silence they once used to regulate themselves starts pressing against them from the other side. Now they check your tone. They reread your message. They notice the delay. They wonder who else sees you now. They remember the warmth they once took for granted. They feel the absence of your emotional availability as a loss. This is the part people romanticize, but let's be honest about what's actually happening. You are not making them obsessed through magic. You are disrupting the old nervous system contract. Before, they could withdraw and trust that your longing would preserve the bond. Your energy held the connection in place even while they distanced themselves from it. But once you stop carrying that emotional weight, they finally have to feel the instability they used to outsource to you. That is when chasing can begin. Not always in obvious ways. Sometimes it is subtle. More messages, more curiosity, more effort, a softness in their tone, a strange increase in emotional presence that wasn't there before. They start referencing memories. They ask more questions. They test the emotional temperature. They become more attentive because your energy is no longer guaranteed. But here is the part you must not miss. Their increased effort is not proof that the pattern is healed. It is proof that the pattern has been disturbed. And those are not the same thing. This is where so many people lose themselves again. Because the second the avoidant starts leaning in, the anxious hope inside them wakes back up. They think, finally they see me. Finally they feel what I felt. Finally this is becoming real. So they rush. They over-explain. They reopen everything. They offer warmth too early. They collapse their boundaries in exchange for temporary reassurance. And the avoidant, feeling the emotional intensity rise again, begins to get overwhelmed again. Then the distancing returns. Not because you were too much, because the pattern was reactivated. This is why your response cannot just be emotional restraint for 3 days. It has to be an identity shift. You have to become someone who no longer measures love by return. Someone who no longer thinks being chosen after being abandoned is the highest form of validation. Someone who understands that just because a person misses your energy does not mean they are ready to protect your heart. Read that again inside yourself. Just because they miss your energy does not mean they are ready to protect your heart. There is a difference between longing and capacity, a difference between attraction and emotional availability, a difference between coming back and showing up. If they return, let them experience the reality of who you are now, not the version of you that waits at the door, the version of you that has become difficult to destabilize. That means you watch behavior, not just emotion. You watch consistency, not intensity. You watch whether their presence can survive honesty, accountability, and time. Can they stay when it is no longer fantasy? Can they stay when they have to name what happened? Can they stay when closeness is real and not just convenient? Can they stay without disappearing the second vulnerability asks something of them? That is the only thing that matters. Because when an avoidant comes back, they often return first through feeling, not through transformation. They feel your absence. They feel relief in reconnecting. They feel the ache of what was lost. But feeling something is not the same as building the internal capacity to maintain it. And if you confuse emotion for readiness, you will keep reopening a door your soul is exhausted from guarding. Picture this. It is late at night. Your phone lights up again. They say they miss you. They say no one feels like you. They say they've been thinking. Maybe they even sound vulnerable, more open than before. Your body wants to melt. It wants to believe. It wants to leap toward the version of the story where this time the ending changes. But another voice inside you, quieter and stronger now, asks a different question. Not, do they want me? But, what happens to me if I let them in the same way again? That question is wisdom. That question is self-respect. Because the point is not to win them back harder than they lost you. The point is not to become so detached that you never care again. The point is to stop betraying your own nervous system for moments of emotional relief. You are allowed to care. You are allowed to feel tenderness. You are allowed to still love what they touched in you. But care without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. Tenderness without discernment becomes access. Love without truth becomes a loop. So, if they come back, slow everything down. Let silence do some of the work. Not manipulative silence, not punishment. Sacred silence. The kind that gives truth room to breathe. The kind that lets you observe instead of instantly merging. The kind that reveals whether they are here because they genuinely want to build, or because they momentarily miss what you made them feel. Silence is unbearable to people who are only returning for regulation. They need quick reassurance, quick warmth, quick proof they still matter. But someone who is truly ready will not be destroyed by your pace. They will respect it. They will meet it. They will understand that re-entry into your life is not automatic anymore. And if they do not, that is your answer. Because the pattern always exposes itself under structure. If a simple boundary makes them disappear, they were not returning with depth. If your calm makes them uncomfortable, they were not prepared for your evolution. If your self-respect feels like rejection to them, they were still looking for the old version of you. Do not shrink back into someone easier to mishandle. That version of you survived, yes. But survival is not the same as power. Real power is this. They come back, and you do not collapse. They reach out, and you do not romanticize crumbs. They miss you, and you do not mistake that for commitment. They want access, and you remember that access to you is earned now. This is the shift. You stop seeing their return as the climax of the story, and start seeing it as the test of your healing. Because anyone can feel strong when the door is closed. The real transformation is what happens when the person who once confused your heart suddenly stands in front of it again. And you remain whole. You remain discerning. You remain slow. You remain yours. And that changes everything. Because now, whether they stay or leave, you do not lose your center. If they are genuine, they will feel the difference in you and rise to meet it. If they are not, your calm will expose them faster than your pain ever could. Either way, you win. That is what self-worth actually looks like. Not revenge, not indifference, not becoming impossible to love. It is becoming unavailable for emotional half-presence. It is understanding that your softness is precious, not public. Your love is sacred, not endlessly renewable for people who disappear when it deepens. Your heart is not a waiting room for someone else's unresolved fear. So when an avoidant comes back, do not ask how to make them stay. Ask whether this version of you still needs them to. That question will tell you how much you have healed. Because the most powerful response is not a perfect text. It is a different self. A self that no longer confuses intensity with intimacy. A self that no longer chases explanations from those who fear emotional exposure. A self that can witness desire, memory, chemistry, and longing without handing over the keys. You do not need to harden. You need to become rooted. So rooted that someone returning cannot uproot your peace. So clear that mixed signals no longer hypnotize you. So self-honoring that even love must arrive correctly to remain. Let them come back if they come back. Let them feel your absence. Let them feel your steadiness. Let them wonder. But do not rush to prove that your heart still opens on command. You are not a place they revisit when their loneliness gets loud. You are not a temporary shelter from their own emotional weather. You are not the same person they left behind. Now, if they want to know you, they have to meet someone new, someone calmer, someone clearer, someone who does not tremble at the possibility of being chosen, someone who has learned that being chosen means nothing if you are not also cherished, handled with care, and emotionally safe. And once you truly understand that, their return stops being the miracle. You are.